Hey guys.
Hello,
Hey, Brian.
Brian.
Hey. So, how you doing, Matt?
I'm doing well, Brian.
Good.
Looks like we
Good.
have another person here with us. Who is this?
It looks to me like Tim Johnson.
Hey, Tim.
Hello.
Hey, hey.
How are you?
We're doing good. Um,
Well,
so how about we look at some AI music stuff to start?
Sounds good.
sounds good.
All right. I'm going to share my screen, and we will talk about Udio and play around with it a little, talk about music and AI and creativity and all that good stuff. Go. All right. This is Udio, and it's make your own music. You basically type in what you want, and then you get it. You can also paste in your own lyrics. Um, I've found it to be a pretty big jump considering where AI music creation was. I saved a few existing songs. I even made one, but then I thought we could play around with it and just kind of see exactly what it's all about. Um, and neither of you have used this before. Is that correct?
That's true.
That's right.
Okay. Let's start with the boring song here that somebody prompted it with choral symphony, parody, music parody, Western classical music, choral orchestral.
Boring song, boring song, boring song, boring song, boring song, boring song. We have to sing the same refrain and the same refrain again on this boring song, boring song. Boring song, boring song, boring song.
And you can see that goes on for quite a while. And I can attest that it is indeed boring.
Yeah,
Um,
but
So
well
they-
crafted.
but yeah, compared to any of the other music generation stuff I've heard, that's pretty good. Yeah, so let's see. Let's go back to the Frog Chronicles. So this was parody, funny, humor, comedy, hard rock, and glam metal. It also generates the album covers, of course, and the lyrics.
Hmm.
Frog, 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 big bad boy, big. Run, run, big frog. Oh no, it's big frog. Oh, God. No. It got me. Ouch.
Yeah, so very
Wow.
different than the boring song. I feel like it got the glam metal pretty good. Yeah. Let's see.
Hmm.
Let's see. This one has got show tunes, Broadway, musical, etc.
What's this, something wet undertow? I feel it seeping through my socks, oh no! I try to shake it off, but it's no use! This feeling's got me all confused! What's this? What's this? How did it get past my socks? What's this? What's this? I need to find out what's this! I look down at the ground, what do I see? A puddle there staring back at me. But how did it get here? I'll never know! It's a mystery, a strange unknown!
Well, it certainly is
Yeah.
getting the genre.
Yeah, for sure. Let's try this one. This one's pretty different than those other two as well. This one is choir, orchestra, heroic violin, triumphant voices, etc. Anyhow, that's that. What'd you guys think of that one?
Was that actually Latin?
Yeah.
It is, but
Yep.
it doesn't. It's like it's borrowing. I think the thing that Bryan that I'm finding most interesting is the lyrical content. Is so those first couple. There's not necessarily a prompt for the content of it. And so it's making it up, but it's like it's trying to borrow phrases from known music sources and then arrange them in a way to try and get them to rhyme. But I'll give you two things. It's an unusual rhyme structure for choral music, especially if it's like high art, old, orchestral choral music like you'd find in a requiem or something like that. And it's tripping me up a little bit because it's unlike. So I used to sing in choirs in college, and I've got my undergrad in music performance and voice. So there are words here that are definitely like I can see where they're pulling them from, but they do not string together the way that a choral piece that I'd be used to does.
Right.
It's like it's trying to take like a modern element and lay it into it, and then these phrases, they are Latin, but they're not the kind of phrases. They're not the phrases that we'd find in sort of typical stuff. So, and I don't know, Matt, if you're kind of keying in on that a little bit, but there's some funniness with the structure of it.
Right.
Well, that's the question I had too, is that, okay, if these are Latin words, are they structured in a way that they're actually telling a story?
No. So that's the funny thing is like this, this should be like, oh tears, oh sadness, transfigured in love. Like they're phrases, but they're not telling a story per se.
Right.
To pity, eternal light, call us. Yeah, eternal. Well, that should be eternal light. I think what they're trying to say is we sing to you, we call, yeah, it's not. They're disconnected from each other. It's not telling a narrative. It's just they're disconnected phrases.
Right.
The algorithm of this then is simply picking up bits and pieces of Latin and using it in whatever way it feels like. Whether it tells a story or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I bet, I don't know what they're using, they're using, if it's their own thing or they're using another system for the lyrics generation. You could go, if it'd be interesting to have one of the other like Claude or ChatGPT generate the lyrics and then bring it in here and see what the difference is.
Can we look at the prompt? Can you just hold it on the prompt? Okay, so the choir, orchestra, and heroic violin unite in a soul-stirring finale. Triumphant voices and soaring melodies embody hope and transformation. Nowhere in there does it say, please use Latin.
Yeah.
True. Yep.
So that was an algorithmic choice.
Yep.
This will be fun to, well, does it think that things are fun or not fun? It was just, this would fit. There were no constrictions about language, so I get to use whatever language I want.
Right. Yeah. Here's one that I made. And I don't think it got the context right. I don't know how well it kind of got I'll just play it.
In the pod, it's just begun. Past the beam suspension. Black-eyed peas meet cello fun. suspension.
Anyhow, you get the gist.
What? I just want to see your prompt. A tribal song about mixing black-eyed beans, jello, and spaghetti. The song is called Pastas, Beans, Suspension, Funny Musical Parody, Electronic Dance Music, Big Beat, Break Beat. Did it satisfy, Bryan? Did it give you what you were asking for?
I don't think it had the tribal stuff in it as much. It did do a song about black-eyed peas, jello, and spaghetti called Pasta Bean Suspension, and it was marginally funny.
And the image.
Yeah, and it made a nice. I mean, it knew what I was saying. I tried to give it something strange that was a little, I don't know what it would draw from, but
This is all a big jump from just a couple of months ago.
that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing about it for me is that it's pretty good about all the different genres. I mean, the other
Yeah,
music's-
it's really impressive.
yeah,
But being able to put together the music, being able to render it, and also adding in some degree of what we're calling creativity is, I mean, that's really interesting. And yeah, the product, the end product, that is a major jump.
Yep.
Major jump in weeks,
Right.
and months.
yeah. Like, where's this going to be in a month?
Right. Yeah. Is this an exponential curve that we're on? Like, is this, because it feels like it is.
I would think that. Yeah.
The degree of complexity continues to be on that kind of log curve.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, this is mirroring what was happening with the image stuff. So yeah, the curve that the improvement on the image generation stuff, the music was never at the same level, but now I think it's increasing at a speed that is it's just a little bit behind. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, so not that you're trying to prompt for this discussion, but why, if you were making some kind of multimedia, would you go to a composer?
Or if you needed a movie soundtrack, or
any
something
media,
for a commercial, something for any
commercial
media.
audio. Yeah, the only benefit of using something that someone else has written is because it's recognizable.
Right.
But how long before AI generated stuff is recognizable?
Right. Yeah.
When you say recognizable, what do you mean?
So when we use music in like in ads and stuff like that, Matt, I'm talking about where you broker on nostalgia, or something that somebody already has an affinity for. So I'm going to play a Beatles tune. It's going to cost me a lot, but I know that there's a payoff for using that tune. That's kind of what I'm thinking about, is if you've got sort of a collective or in a niche market awareness of a song that everybody knows, you're going to get a bigger payoff by having a Taylor Swift song in the background. And then you're just trying to figure out, the cost to benefit ratio there. But for so much of the stuff that's not that, that's the only thing I can think of where you would hone in on a specific piece of music.
So, I mean, somebody could prompt the AI app with, we want some Taylor Swift and Beatles in this song because we want to hit both markets. But then again, then the question is copyright, and we haven't even really got there yet with all of this. Like,
Right. That's a mess.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, and
we already have a problem in music, which is, I mean, we all heard the idea of, good artists borrow and great artists steal. You can't genuinely create a brand new rock song that hasn't been influenced by the Beatles. It's sort of why the premise of that movie where the Beatles never existed is sort of a funny premise, because if the Beatles don't exist, all of your characters who are so impressed with the Beatles are a result of them. And, so it raises that question again of like, what's the copyright here? If I'm modeling it off of someone, if I'm copying them, I've got influences as a musician. There's no way around it. But AI has all of the influences. That's the problem with it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't discern. It doesn't. I write music because it's music I really like and I've been influenced by. So you're not going to catch me writing certain types of music. But AI doesn't care about that.
It's also not a person. So it's
Correct.
yeah, it's
That's
created
one of the
it's created by a company to make money
Right.
solely, you know. So it's kind of hard, yeah.
and that's one of the discussions. Go
Yeah.
ahead. So I'm sorry, Brian.
I was just going to say to Tim's earlier point, I can envision AI created characters or musicians that then become popular that, you know, so like an AI Taylor Swift that's super popular that makes music and then people identify with that and they don't care so much that it's not a person because they have somebody to identify it with, which is a made up generated thing.
Yeah, and that is where, like, that's why I asked you, I think, Tim, about the issue of uh references and earlier was that how how do we going forward, I can see that somebody references somebody in their music. I can hear a riff. I can hear an influence. We're using the Beatles, their use of like the French horn in a couple of their songs, and then somebody used it in the 1990s, and they were really trying to sound like the Beatles. And then somebody now doesn't even know that they're trying to sound like the Beatles. They are just sounding like the Beatles by using the French horn that way. Um, how does that get qualified and quantified? What I mean by qualified is like, is it okay? Like, when are we going to start to have this discourse about qualifying that kind of usage? And then if it is okay, who's going to get paid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
And
that's where we're way behind the ball on having those types of conversations, because you absorb all of it and then you can generate, you know, what you want going forward. At least in the past, you had some degree of filter where a single human being, you know, was the primary filter. I think, Matt, the funny thing is, it's like it's this really gray conversation because AI is not really doing something dramatically different than what human beings have done. It's just doing it on this scale and a speed that we haven't had before. Where, you know, the reason we have Mozart and Bach is because of filters that they went through. And Mendelssohn found a bunch of Bach music and was a fan of Bach and collected all of it. And that's only because of Mendelssohn. Otherwise, we may have ended up losing a whole bunch of Bach's music. But that's one person who did that for us. But now it's different. It's not just like one person saving that and filtering it. We're like getting it all at once. And I don't know if we know how to manage that. And we're certainly not ahead of the curve on those conversations. Because
No.
it's barely enough to get the technology companies to have those conversations. The folks who are responsible in our country for deciding on how we regulate it are way behind the curve on this. You know, it's a group of people who refer to the internet as tubes and things like that. And they're going to struggle with the concept.
And this
Right.
is only speeding up. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not like it's just going fast. It's going faster. So yeah, I'm skeptical that we'll ever catch up.
but I also want to go before, because I heard it's not a human being, and I also
Yeah.
heard that it's doing it faster. And before those things, I want to say that it was an application set in motion by human beings who said you can sample anything without any consequence, without any responsibility online, and use that to make anything that you're prompted to make. That was not its choice. It was told to do that because it's not an entity. And that can be an awful boring additive to this. The boring song is going to come up when I'm starting to talk. But to me, that's where this keeps going back to, is that has to be part of the conversation, is that this is not making its own choices. It looks like it is because it's going so damn fast and it's getting faster, but it's not. It was set in motion by saying it's okay to, I'm going to use the word steal. You get to take without asking and use whatever you want and create whatever you want without any acknowledgement of acquisition.
But it gets so mushy because then the response will be, but it's not sampling, it's learning, it's feeding it, that's the response I see all the time is, yeah, but this is different. This isn't stealing. This isn't, chopping something up and then putting it back together in different pieces. It's not a mashup. It's learning like people.
But that's where I would come in, Bryan, and I would say, but that's exactly what is happening. It's just doing it so fast and so often that it can't be caught.
Right. Yeah.
And it was started by us. We did this. And we continue to do it.
Yep.
And also the whole thing too of, I'm sorry, I'll finish with this, Tim.
Yeah, no, of course.
I heard you say the thing too about, why hire somebody to make a movie soundtrack? As the rug keeps rolling up on people, all the people who may say, well, have arguments about why this is okay, then the rug rolls up behind them, and all of a sudden their job becomes, we don't need humans doing this. We can do this in 7 seconds with an app, and it takes you 3 months, and so it's just much more cost effective. Sorry, you're going to have to do something else now. As that keeps happening to more and more people, that's when these conversations, as people are getting their butts kicked, that's when they start to go, hey, that hurts.
Right. Yeah, the music stuff is a great example of that because, I've seen AI generated album covers that musicians are making all the time. But now the shoe's getting on the other foot. And that's just going to continue. Like you said, it's just going to eat up more and more and more.
I think the other thing that's sort of, we're talking about unintended consequences.
Yeah.
There's this other piece that's really interesting to me, and I'm sure this is happening, within the graphic art world as well, in the video world, as the video keeps on improving. One of the things that that AI, at least right now, the way it's been told to approach things is to sort of use its own experiences and so on, filtering through kind of what it finds the most of. And so I'm going to use music as the example. If you ever listen to Rick Beato, his podcasts, or some of the other music commentators that are on YouTube, one of the interesting things that they point out is if you look at the music over the last couple of decades, it's become compressed creatively in that it sounds like itself, and it's not as broad. There aren't as many variations in chords in the songs or the melody lines or the harmonies or things like that as there were in the 1970s, 1980s, 1960s, like in that window. So it's taken what was a broad group, it's kind of compressed it down to the most popular music, and then that becomes popular because it feeds on itself. And then AI gets into the mix and says, oh, well, what body should I pull from? It really limits itself to a fixed area. And sort of what does that do to us culturally as well? Like, not to get too esoteric, but we're basically now replicating the replication that was already there and then accelerating it. And I'm sure the same thing is happening. Some folks have been demonstrating, like, well, I'm kind of getting the same imagery out of AI over and over again. It's like it feeds on itself over and over again, and then it becomes self-referential and says, oh, well, all the great art that's out there is all the art that I made. and then it starts building off of its own art, and then it starts getting really wacky sometimes where it goes. But to me, that's an interesting, I don't know where that ends up, because like you said, it starts taking Taylor Swift music, which has become very similar to other music. Maybe it mixes in some Beatles, but it keeps compressing it over and over again to the same genre, the same taste, and pushing it back out to people. And I'm not sure if that becomes sort of like a monoculture thing that's not good for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a significant unintended consequence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A culture folding back in on itself over and over again is not a
Yeah.
culture that grows and changes, because what we've heard is that we need diversity, and that if we turn to this as the source, which how could people not turn to this as the source?
Mhm.
It seems like it is a genius thing, a genius machine, whatever you want, music, art, eventually food. We've already heard that it can do that, right? Buildings, anything, fix cancer. Okay, it's a genius. But it is also limited to mathematics, to an algorithm, which is not organic, which is also led by us. This is one of the things, the hubris that I can hear in people who have designing this, that they keep thinking that it is moving towards sort of a sentience. It's not. It's repetition. That is not the same thing. And it is really fast repetition. That's not the same thing as sentience. I can't describe exactly what sentience is, but a conversation with something that's based in zeros and ones, it's not the same thing. And so how quickly do we get that? We're not even having conversation. This was the other, I'm jumping to something else, but I'll finish with this. Bryan and I had this talk earlier in the week of like, how come this isn't more prevalent right now in media? Why isn't it happening more? Where are all the songs that are created by, like, why aren't people making them now? Why aren't people making music with AI and not caring about the consequences of responsibility to where the origin of that music made by AI is coming from, whether morally or legally? How come it isn't all happening now, especially in an election year, also with the other stuff besides music?
Yeah, it is surprising that we haven't had more of an avalanche of deep fake stuff yet. Or maybe we
So
just don't know.
yeah, I agree. Although there is a bit of it. Where I've been seeing it pop up are sort of imaginary versions of politicians doing things that they otherwise wouldn't do. So I'm not trying to introduce like a partisan approach towards this, but in particular, I have seen images of a candidate who I would be very surprised if you ever caught them praying in a religious setting, and it's part of a video that is being shared. That's look at this candidate. This is why they're so great, and it's got a narrative going behind it too. So it's not out there.
Yeah.
And I think there's sometimes more of it than we realize. But
Yeah, that's true.
it's making its way into the narrative, into the dialogue, the public dialogue.
I'm finding more and more that I'm having to skip YouTube videos because I'll click on one and it's like, oh, that's generated. Oh, that, that. And some of it's pretty convincing, and you'll start listening to it. And then after a bit, you're like, okay, I don't think a person wrote that, or that's not really a person talking. But
what kind of videos though, Bryan? Are they like,
they're basically what they are is they're letting AI go, and my guess is they're saying, okay, make me a video for somebody who's interested in buying a new fixed lens camera, and it'll go and get a whole bunch of other clips and throw them together and take a bunch of a bunch of stuff that's found and write up a script and then say it and produce the whole video and throw it out there. And
yeah, I've seen the same thing.
Yeah, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, that's giving me some real information, but then it's like, okay, No. That's not.
And I guess the one that starts to concern me a little bit is I've seen some, Matt, that are history. So in effect, what you'd see on a history channel or something like that being thrown together of, let me tell you the historical significance of this thing or the things that happened around it. And the concern there is that AI has not always been great on discerning what's accurate and what isn't. And so you could, I haven't yet seen one, but you could end up with what seems ostensibly like a factual based video, but it's not, or there's some missing piece or some interpretation that's there. But yeah, I see a lot of that and see they're still discernible, like you're saying, Bryan, but
Yeah.
but how far are they from not?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, one
Getting
of the
better.
things I have seen too is, and I acknowledge those things. And that's the thing too, is like it's sneaking up on us. It is happening. It's getting better and better at it. So it's becoming more and more difficult to discern between, is that Tom Brokaw's real voice talking about this situation or not, that happened in 1987 or whatever. Or was that all fabricated from collecting Tom Brokaw's voice and adding it to made up AI imagery based upon that event? Okay, so here's one of the other things, though. What I have seen is a couple of one recent movie, but they say it's a 1960s creation of that movie. Have you seen this thing on YouTube? I don't want to say the name because I don't want to advertise the movie, but it's a really popular movie. It's a space kind of thing, but it's got 1960s actors
Hmm.
and places. It's all fabricated. You can see it, but it's like a couple of second shots all put together. So that's what also kind of feels like AI, that it can't actually put long scenes together. You guys
Yet.
haven't seen those yet?
I saw a similar one where it was trying to take a superhero movie and put in with 1980s actors.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Which I have to be
Yeah.
careful because I kind of liked it.
Right.
John Travolta playing a
Yeah.
superhero, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean,
Yep.
but so also you as a musician, Tim, do you see? So we've shown artwork to artists, and they've been like, I was like, I kind of found that interesting, right? And they found imagery interesting and could be inspired by it. Do you think that the music is coming to a place for you that's being created by AI that you can go, oh, I didn't really think of that kind of transition? Is it coming to that place? Is it there already for you?
I don't think it's there yet, but it can't be far behind. Um, I do find it interesting and potentially inspiring. I guess there's still something within me that wants to write music and record it. And so that in and of itself is enough. It's funny, Bryan and I were talking about this last week, where I haven't seen AI write sort of the thing that I want to write about, which I'm sort of inspired by, which is somewhat nonsensical, little, non sequitur type of concepts. But I don't know, like it's not preventing me. It still is more in the world of inspiration, where you might hear something and think, yeah, that's an interesting turnaround. That's an interesting mashup or melding of different genres. I'm still at that place, and I don't feel like I'm as concerned about it. But in defense of people working in the industry, I don't make my living making music. And so for me, it's avocational in the truest sense of the word, of it is for the love of it, or an amateur thing. I do it for the love of it. That's the reason I'm doing it. So that's a very different situation. Like if you're asking me about my software consulting and that being replaced, that starts to be a little bit more like, oh, that hits home real close.
Yeah. Yeah. If
Yeah.
you're doing it for a living and you're competing against something that's 10,000 times faster than you are,
Right.
you're in trouble.
Which is something I heard or saw recently on social networking, a person complaining about AI saying, look, I'm very happy with AI figuring out how to put the dishes away and cut the lawn for me. I just didn't expect AI to show up and do my work as an artist. So I have to go find a job where I cut the lawn and put the dishes away as for a living. And I would go, like AI, fixing cancer, uh, fixing the climate change, please do it. But whoever is sending it down this road, that doesn't make Matt happy.
You know what's
FYI.
funny about that, Matt, is that this was the low-hanging fruit, ironically. Like all of human history, what we've got of creativity posted somewhere, but research, that's still behind some closed doors. Medical research and the robotic elements that you'd need in order to help with the lawn and the dishes and things like that. It's just funny. It's like the first thing that AI could go after, the easiest thing is, oh, I can replicate all of this stuff. And it was super easy for it to do that in a certain sense, because I can spit back out more of the same. And there's so much of it. There's such a body of work to operate from. It's just funny because I agree. I think that the irony is that the place where we could use the most help, AI doesn't have enough information to help, at least yet. Maybe it will, maybe it can, maybe we can concentrate it that way. But it's a funny thing of like, they don't have access to it. And one could argue the reason they don't have access to it is because our system, our marketplace, kind of keeps that stuff close to the vest until it gets to the point where it wants to share it and can make money off of it. So there's a vested interest there to not have AI get into the middle of it until people can have sort of control over it. Whereas in some of these other areas of creative, there's not, enough of a stranglehold on that market or that research to be able to say, yeah, maybe we'll hold off on you helping us with this.
Okay, but wait, do you see? I imagine that it is involved in those other areas. We're just not learning about it. I'm sorry, I can't believe it's not involved. They haven't turned this science towards military production.
Oh,
and
they have.
Yeah,
The thing that
absolutely.
Tim is saying is that there's just the reason that the art stuff has jumped out ahead is because there's so much more material freely available for it. So finding, training it about military things and medical things, that all of that isn't really out on the internet the same way that illustrations are.
So we're just okay. So do you think
pharmaceutical companies aren't going to say, hey, every pharmaceutical company around the world, let's all pool our data and we're going to let AI collectively go through it. It's going to be, no, this pharmaceutical company is going to say, well, we'll do it with our stuff.
Yep.
But we're not going to extend it beyond that,
right?
Because it is a detriment to them to do that.
Right.
So do you think it was involved in the development of the vaccine for COVID?
It was. It definitely was.
To some degree. I mean, not as far along as it is now, but yeah.
No, but it was because that was developed awfully quick. All that mRNA stuff.
But that was also because.
So the mRNA stuff, though, the mRNA stuff is decades old.
Yeah.
Like the actual technology is old. That wasn't new. That's part of the reason why it could be accelerated, was that we had this technology waiting for it to have a virus that required rapid development of a vaccine. So some of it is because we don't necessarily see all of that slow working that happens. But as far as trying to help to discern kind of the attack on it, I mean, at least there have been at least a couple of articles on some rudimentary usage of AI in that.
I'm pretty sure.
But I don't want to go into an alarmist state of like AI invented it overnight.
No.
mRNA has been around for a long time. Yeah.
But I know they did use it to like accelerate the vaccine trials and the results and all of that, because it's so good at pattern recognition and things.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. But
okay.
we're working awfully hard as humans to replace ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is the issue of we talked about this before. Storyboard artists are perfectly fine with using AI to develop a story, just as long as AI isn't used to develop the storyboard. And writers are perfectly happy with storyboards being used for AI. Or, it's an
Right.
exaggeration. It's not fair. There are probably hundreds of thousands of storyboard artists and writers who care about the other people in their business and aren't interested in doing that. But until it does start to become like a threat, it is still a conversation had at a cocktail party, not something that in just the few months that Bryan and I have been talking, it's not hyperbole to say what you just said, Bryan. We are working very hard to replace ourselves.
Yeah. Yep.
So along those lines, though, tell me what you think about. So I've been thinking about this, and sort of it goes back to what is the nature of creativity? What are we doing? What's the point of it? But do you think, I want to be really careful of the phrase, it couldn't happen because I can't envision it, because that's sort of how this stuff comes about, is, you don't want to say that. I have not wrapped my brain around the idea of replication of human collaboration with AI. That I have not seen that yet, nor have I seen inklings of that potentially. So there's a difference between AI saying, well, here are some suggestions, and providing something back again, and what I would describe as creative collaboration. So I've been in some situations where there's been real creative collaboration, and it's pinging off of each other and doing something, and something like I didn't expect came from the collaboration. That may be possible. It's just I haven't seen that yet, and I'm not sure where, if and when that comes about, what that looks like.
I think it's close. I think it's this might be a good thing to poke around with, uh doing one where we're interviewing Claude and Pi and some of the other ones as guests. I've with Pi, just in trying, I've tried a little bit of like just seeing what would happen if I tried to collaborate with Pi on an idea, uh, or like just seeing what would happen if I start with a random story and just kind of bounce it back and forth. And it's not as good as collaborating with a person, but it was also a little unnerving.
Yeah, I think part of it is the collaboration with humans doesn't feel as unnerving in a certain way, but the idea of putting something out there and saying, what do you think of this, or what would you do with it, would be interesting to see that. And yeah,
Yeah,
maybe Claude is the
we
way
should
of doing
try
it,
that.
but
Yeah.
like, I've written this song, what would you do with it? Or I've written this lyric, what would you do with it? That's the funny thing, is I don't know what that looks like. And I know what it looks like as human collaboration.
Right.
And I don't know if it's got sort of this the accidental, stumbling into things that human beings have had, partially because of our own limitations, or is AI just going to shove back at me the same stuff? Like, well, this is what I would do, but it's almost the same thing over and over again, as opposed to like a really sort of a spark of, whether it's randomness or just the fact that human beings have these funny filters that they have. So my collaboration of writing music, there are things that my friend who I write with has sent back to me, or I've sent him just a basic run through, and the lyrics take a turn that I never would have thought of, and we ran with it. And I don't know what that looks like, if it is possible. Similarly, when I was working with somebody, he was sort of stuck creatively on this idea of, I'm trying to do this thing, and I've got these characters, and I've got this, this idea, but I don't know, like, I'm just sort of stuck. And he was, not able to move forward. So I gathered a group of people together. We brainstormed and we said, well, what if we took your characters and put them into these scenarios, and we can just churn out a whole bunch of ideas? But there was this lateral element to it that wasn't there, that I don't know if AI just keeps giving you back more of the same. Like, if you're hitting your head against the wall, does AI have a way of introducing the sort of jarring type of suggestion or not?
I think we should try it and see where it's at with that. I think that would be fascinating. I think it's a
Mhm.
fascinating question. I
Mhm.
know that there's have you ever heard of Plot.ai? It's an AI for collaboratively writing stories and scripts.
Mhm.
Um, and but it's more than just like helping you format it or whatever. It's trying to collaborate with you. It's trying to say, oh, well, what if you did this? Or hey,
Mhm.
this isn't, or these two things aren't working as well as maybe this. Um, I wish we had more time. I definitely want to show you guys this other video because what we're talking about right now dovetails directly into something else that I wanted to show you. So, yeah.
Can we come back?
Yeah, I think so. I think we could. Yeah, because they are AI developers are discussing exactly what you're talking about.
Mhm.
And also kind of some of the other stuff that Matt's been talking about too. So I think you would find it fascinating.
Cool. So we'll do this again. Tim, you up for that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right,
Awesome.
let's do this. Cool.
Well, thank you so much, Tim, Bryan.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks for the invite.
See you next time.